I am Congressman Ron Paul. I've been elected to the Congress 12 times from Texas. Before I went into the Congress, I delivered babies for a living and delivered 4,000 babies. Now I would like to be known and defend the title that I am the champion of liberty and I defend the Constitution. Thank you.
Let's continue the conversation. I want to come to Congressman Paul. You're all here saying the President of the United States is making the economy worse. Has he done one thing? Has he done one thing right when it comes to the economy in this country?
Boy, that's a tough question. No, I can't think of anything, but may I answer the question that you alluded to before about whether or not 5% is too optimistic. No, there's nothing wrong without setting a goal of 5 or 10 or 15% if you have a free market economy. We're trying to unwind a Keynesian bubble that's been going on for 70 years, and you're not going to touch this problem until you liquidate the bad debt and the malinvestment, go back to work, but you have to have sound money. You have to recognize how we got into trouble. We got into trouble because we had a financial bubble, and it's caused by the Federal Reserve. If you don't look at monetary policy, we will continue the trend of the last decade. We haven't developed any new jobs in the last decade. Matter of fact, we've had 30 million new people and no new jobs. It's because the people don't understand monetary policy and central economic planning. Free markets will give you 10 or 15% growth or whatever, and you will not have to turn it off because you think it's going to cause inflation. It doesn't work that way.
I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to ask one more time politely. We want to get as many voters as we can involved.
And I'm standing here with Mike Patinsky. He's a small business owner from Harrisville, New Hampshire. And Mike, what question do you have tonight?
Well, for the candidates, I'd like to know how they plan on returning manufacturing jobs to the United States.
Congressman Paul, why don't you start with that one?
Pretty important, because everything we've done in the last 20 or 30 years, we've exported our jobs. And when you have a reserve currency of the world and you abuse it, you export money. That becomes the main export, so it goes with the money. You have to invite capital. The way you get capital into a country, you have to have a strong currency, not a weak currency. Today, it's a deliberate job of the Federal Reserve to weaken our currency. We should invite capital back. First thing is we have trillions of dollars, at least over $1 trillion of U.S. money made overseas, but it stays over there because if they bring it home, they get taxed. If you want to, we need to get the Fed to quit printing the money, and if you want capital, you have to entice those individuals to repatriate their money and take the taxes off us, set up a financial system, deregulate and de-tax to invite people to go back to work again. But as long as we run a program of deliberately weakening our currency, our jobs will go overseas, and that is what's happened for a good many years, especially in the last decade.
Governor.
The federal, Congressman Paul, this is for you. The federal government now assists many industries. Green jobs, the auto industry, research and development, all get subsidies. Given the current state of the economy, what standards do you have, if any, for government assistance to private enterprise?
Well, there shouldn't be any government assistance to private enterprise. It's not morally correct. It's not legal. It's bad economics. It's not part of the Constitution. If you allow an economy to thrive, they'll decide how R&D works or where they invest their monies. But when the politicians get in and direct things, you get the malinvestment. They do the dumb things. They might build too many houses, and they might not direct their research to the right places. So, no, it's a fallacy to think that government and politicians and bureaucrats are smart enough to manage the economy, so it shouldn't happen.
All right, these are the Republicans, the conservative candidates. Every time you applaud, I know you're happy with the answer. You're taking your time away, though. Republican discussion, especially when money is scarce and you've got to start cutting. It's a question of priorities. What should the government be doing? And maybe what should the government be doing in a better economy that it can't do now that has to go? So talk about foreclosures a bit, but then tell me something. If you were president and you were dealing with it in your first few weeks, you said, I might like to do this, but I can't afford to do this. Be as specific as you can. What goes?
I would want to do much less, much sooner. The government shouldn't be involved. When you take the bankruptcies, we've been doing a whole lot. We've been propping them up. We've had the Federal Reserve buy all the illiquid assets which were worthless, stick it with the taxpayers. People who made the money when the bubble was being blown up, they're the ones who got bailed out. But you want the correction. Corrections are good. The malinvestment and the bubbles that are caused by the Federal Reserve and the government government, and we keep propping it up. And that's why this is going. It was predictable it would come. It's predictable it's lasted 3 years. And it's predictable as long as we do what we're doing in Washington, it's going to last another 10 years. We're doing what we did in the Depression. We're doing what the Japanese have done. You need to get the prices of houses down to clear the market, but they're trying to keep the prices up. They actually have programs in Washington. We're stimulating housing. You need to clear the market, and then we can all go back to work. But what we're doing now is absolutely...
Right now, I want to go down to our audience. We've got Josh McKelvin with a question.
Thanks very much, John. And I have Dr. Paul Collins, who you've been running a family practice in Manchester for how long?
27 years.
Nice work. So not surprising your question is related to health care. What's your question, sir?
Yes, sir. As a member of the baby boomer generation, I've been contributing to Medicare through payroll taxes for over 30 years. How do you propose to keep Medicare financially solvent for the next 50 years and beyond?
Let's start with Dr. Paul on this one.
Well, under today's conditions, it's not solvent and won't be solvent. You know, if you're an average couple and you paid your entire amount into Medicare, you would have put $140,000 into it. And in your lifetime, you will take out more than 3 times that much. So a little bit of arithmetic tells you it's not solvent. So we're up against the wall on that. So it can't be made solvent. It has to change. We have to have more competition in medicine. And I would think that if we don't want to cut any of the medical benefits for children or the elderly, because we have drawn so many in and got them so dependent on the government, if you want to work a transition, you have to cut a lot of money. And that's why I argue the case that this money ought to be cut out of foreign welfare and foreign militarism and corporate welfare and the military-industrial complex. Then we might have enough money to tide people over. But some revamping has to occur. What we need is competition. We need to get a chance for the people to opt out of the system. Just to talk about opting out of Obamacare, why can't we opt out of the whole system and take care of ourselves?
All right, let's continue the conversation. Governor Pawlenty, Congressman Paul, does faith have a role in these public issues, the public square, or is it a personal issue at your home and in your church?
I think faith has something to do with the character of the people who represent us. And law should have a moral fiber to it, and our leaders should. We shouldn't expect us to try to change morality. You can't teach people how to be moral. But the Constitution addresses this by saying, literally it says no theocracy, but it doesn't talk about church and state. The most important thing is the First Amendment. The Congress shall write no laws, which means Congress should never prohibit the expression of your Christian faith in a public place.
Okay, great. Let's get down. Josh McKelvin, let's continue the conversation. On that point, to voters out there for whom this is an important issue, let's try to quickly go through it. Let me start at this end. We'll just go right through. I'll describe it this way. Are you a George W. Bush Republican, meaning a constitutional amendment to ban same-sex marriage, or a Dick Cheney Republican, who, like I believe the Congresswoman just said, says this should be made, this decision, same-sex marriage, should be a state?
The federal government shouldn't be involved. I wouldn't support an amendment, but let me suggest one of the ways to solve this ongoing debate about marriage, look up the dictionary. We know what marriage is all about, but then get the government out of it. Why doesn't it go to the church, and why doesn't it go to the individuals? I don't think government should give us a license to get married. It should be in the church.
Governor Romney. Congressman Paul, do you agree with that position?
Not quite. You know, I served 5 years in the military. I've had a little experience. I've spent a little bit of time over in the Pakistan, Afghanistan area, as well as in Iran. But I wouldn't wait for my generals. I'm the commander-in-chief. I make the decisions. I tell the generals what to do, and I'd bring them home as quickly as possible, and I'd get them out of Iraq as well, and I wouldn't start a war in Libya. I'd quit bombing Yemen, and I'd quit bombing Pakistan. I'd start taking care of people here at home because we could save hundreds of billions of dollars. Our national security is not enhanced by our presence over there. We have no purpose there. We should learn the lessons of history, and the longer we're there, the worse things are, and the more danger we're in as well, because our presence there is not making friends, let me tell you.
Governor Pawlenty, a growing number of Republicans. Congressman Paul, if you were the President of the United States and you could pick one, but just one of these gentlemen and the lady to join your administration, who would it be and why?
To join the administration?
Yes.
Oh, I would think everybody would qualify as...
You only get to pick one. It's about choices.
Have to pick one. Well, let me look them over. I would have to do a bit more quizzing. I would have to check.
Fair.
They haven't even told me how they feel about the Federal Reserve yet. They haven't told me about a non-intervention foreign policy.
We're
So
down.
I'll have to do some more quizzing.
We're down.